Hey everyone, welcome to the second general meeting of the spring semester. We appreciate you guys for taking the time to be here today because we know how busy it is during this time of year. So today we have two CSULB DPT students. So let's jump straight into it. I'm gonna hand them the floor so they can introduce themselves. And then once they do, guys, feel free to unmute yourselves and ask them questions.
Okay, I can go first. Hi, I'm Raquel. I'm a second year student physical therapist at Cal State Long Beach, which is where we all go. So nothing crazy exotic. But yeah, I'm a second year. I live in Orange County, and my main areas of interest within PT are pelvic floor therapy, specifically as it relates to pregnant, postpartum, and oncological populations and sexual function. So interested in any of that, let me know.
And my name is Vivian. I'm a first year in the Long Beach program, also from OC. I have no idea what my interests are within the field of PT yet, but I actually didn't get any inpatient hours during my shadowing, so I think it'd be cool to definitely explore that realm a little more.
All right, so to get us started, I wanted to ask you guys, what made you choose physical therapy?
That's always a good question. And unfortunately, I feel like a lot of SPTs have like a very similar story, like, oh, I was an athlete and then I got injured. I don't have that story, to be honest. My sister wanted to be a PT and I'm like a younger sister. So I was like, oh yeah, I'll do that too. And I stuck with it and she did it. So I just thought, oh, it sounds kind of cool. And the more I learned about it, the more I thought, wow, yeah, I really find meaning in that. I don't know. I think it really speaks to me that our field is we're helping people move, but we're using movement to do that. I don't know. I think it's so simple, but really powerful and very empowering for patients specifically, because we're partnering with them to help them, help themselves.
I agree with everything Raquel said. She's way more well-spoken than I am, so just a heads up. Yeah, I also never got injured or anything. My story is also kind of boring. I think in high school, I figured I'd want to explore like a health field, but I knew I didn't want to invest the time into like med school or anything crazy like that. And as an athlete, I just kind of gravitated towards PT to explore. And then I just got lucky that the first field I picked to explore was the one that I could see myself doing. So basically, yeah, I just stuck with it. And everything Raquel said about using movement and all that, I agree with. I can't think of anything else to add. Actually, I could say, if you look at the logistics of things, like the lifestyle, like work-life balance of PT seemed very nice, as well as, the ability to just connect with people a little more. So, but I'm sure all of you guys are probably interested in it for the same reasons.
Yeah. And I think, sorry, as I'm talking about, I'm like, oh, duh, like there are so many other reasons. But one thing that also comes to mind for me is that PT is like very universal. It's just helping people move. And so anyone that moves or is affected by movement can be treated by PT. And that means like literally anyone in some capacity, we all move, whether we're bedbound or whether we're fully ambulatory and able to walk independently, super impacted by movement. For example, like I'm interested in sexual function in pregnant people. Like that doesn't seem like, when you first think about it, like, is that something PT does? Yeah, that's something PT does, right? There's muscles within the pelvic floor that are super important to sexual function, especially during pregnancy, postpartum, all that kind of stuff. So I think it's really powerful that we can work with literally anyone. The sky and your creativity is the limit. If there's something you're interested in, I pinky promise you, there's already a PT working in that niche.
So since we're all in the process of completing our prereqs and building up our applications, do you guys have any tips on how to make your application stand out?
If you guys haven't already heard these pieces of advice, I'd say number one, diversifying your hours. So for anyone who doesn't know what that means, just make sure that you try to get into some different settings of PT to volunteer or observe in. That always, sometimes that's better than getting like 5,000 hours at just one clinic. So that's one. And then Also, like, you can do things that are unrelated to PT. Like, you don't have to make your whole story or your application, your resume, just PT focused, because that'll help you stand apart a little bit as well.
Yeah, I totally agree. I'm not all PT schools are like this, but I know Long Beach specifically has like a huge emphasis on looking at applicants as holistic human beings. I have classmates that had 4.0s, and I have classmates that had like 3.2s in lower in undergrad. So they definitely look a lot at like leadership activities that you're involved in outside of PT, you know, that volunteer work, maybe you like coaching basketball or something like that. And then leadership, I do think they put a big emphasis on. I mean, I'm biased. That was like kind of my application. It was more geared towards leadership, but I mean, a lot of my classmates were also geared towards that. So I would say it doesn't hurt.
Oh yeah, like now that you say that, I think my application was geared towards like community and community service. So I guess we both had a theme kind of, huh?
Yeah.
So that might be cool as well. But obviously, like, just make sure you just really reflect like who you are and what your core values are through whatever activities you decide to do.
Yeah, totally.
I have a question, if you don't mind. So when you guys talk about like diversifying your experience, how did you go about like finding different places to go to? Because I feel like if I just go and look up physical therapy, the most common thing that pops up is orthopedic. So I just want to know, like, how did you guys make those connections?
Yeah, I can go to this one first because I mainly just got like ortho experience, but I did have a pelvic floor experience, which is how I ended up interested in it. And it was like very niche, not a super common type of PT. And so now that I'm in PT school, I know more about how to navigate all this. So pretty much like if you've heard of APTA, they're kind of like the PT national organization, and they have like different subsets within their organization. So for example, if you're really into like stroke patients, there's like a whole section for like neuro type stuff. And on each of their websites, they literally have PT locators where you can find all the PTs that are registered that work in those different populations. So if you look up that, then you can just like, then it's emailing. It's emailing saying, can I come in? Can I come shadow? Hey, I'm really interested. Can you help mentor me? Things like that. So I just literally would call people, hey, can I just come in and watch you? And then that opens the door to a lot more. That would be my advice.
Yeah, I actually didn't even know about the locator thing. But yeah, so I applied like around COVID time, so I got 0 inpatient hours as I mentioned, but even though I had just outpatient ortho, within that I did have an aquatic clinic that I worked at, and basically like I just Googled neuro PT, aquatic therapy. I think I also Googled like pelvic floor, like whatever I was interested in, I just tried to find clinics near me. And then it was a lot of like cold emailing, some walking in, some calling, but for me, I had the most success just emailing clinics. And I will say, like, even though I had a lot of outpatient ortho, the outpatient ortho clinics that I did work or volunteer at, they were all like different in some ways. So I was still able to pull that into my interviews or my essays when asked about like my experiences.
Yeah, and I would say like diversifying doesn't even mean it has to be something other than like your standard ortho, like, I have a knee replacement type of PT. Like even different clinics do things drastically differently. And that counts like a check on the box for your application of like, well, they didn't just work at Select PT, they worked at Select PT and I don't know, Southland or something like that.
Thank you.
So staying on the application process, what would you guys say the most important part of it is? Your GPA, letters of rec, observational hours, GRE?
It's kind of hard, but I do know that schools are weighting the GRE less and less. So usually, like, as long as you hit those minimum numbers, should be covered for most programs, especially if you have another part of your application that really stands out.
Yeah, this is kind of hard. I don't know. I literally talked to like our admissions like advisor or person at Long Beach is like one of our professors. I literally talked to him like, why'd you let me in? Like, what was that my application? He's like, I don't know. I was like, okay, thanks for nothing. But I think definitely I agree, not GRE, as long as you meet the minimums, no one cares, it seems like. I think it's more just like, yeah, the different types of experiences you have. Like, do you have something that like kind of sets you apart? Whether that be like, oh, I worked as like an acute rehab unit, or like just something that's like a little bit different or shows that you really put thought into it. And I think good letters of rec always help. Like, you definitely don't want just generic letters of rec. I think that's won't be the best for you.
Raquel, do you think it's kind of true though that the public schools weight numbers a little more heavily? Or do you think it's just because of like how many people apply?
That they weight numbers, you mean like GPA?
Mm-hmm.
I
Just
don't
curious
think
because
so.
I don't really
I
know
mean,
either.
maybe some. I know Long Beach specifically, and again, this is like, I've talked to a lot of my classmates about this. I don't think GPA matters that much for Long Beach. There's a lot of people with 4.0s that get rejected from this program. I mean, it is really competitive, but like, they're not looking for just the smartest. That's more, and nothing wrong with like wanting smart students. Like Chapman is well known for like, they have like an algorithm for like, oh, well, if they have this GPA and this whatever, they'll be good students. Nothing wrong with that, but definitely not Long Beach, or I don't think public schools as much. I think they're more really looking for that well-rounded applicant.
Yeah. Oh, I forgot if I mentioned it earlier, but my cohort's the same way where like all our stats and stuff vary a lot. So
Mhm.
Who did you guys go to professor-wise for your letters of recommendation, and how did you go about like making that connection on that end?
That's a good question. I was applying right when like COVID hit, so it kind of sucked because I was like trying to, email professors, but they'd all like gone somewhere because the world is crazy or whatever. But I would say I prioritized the quality of the letter versus like whether it made sense that I was asking this person for a letter. So for my professors, I got one from the School of Dance, and I got one from, actually wasn't even a professor. My second one that wasn't a PT was from a supervisor within ASI leadership. And she was a student herself. She was an undergraduate herself. So like I double checked, like, hey, are you okay with me using this person as a letter of rec writer? And they were like, I mean, yeah, you spent a lot of time doing that, so do that. So I didn't have any letters from prereq people, from people in my major, which I'd heard like, oh, it's a big red flag. But honestly, I just felt like I'd go with whoever I knew would write me the best letter. And didn't work out poorly for me. So I would say go with whoever's going to give you the best one, and just, participate in class, go to office hours, try to really be intentional. Even after you take that class, like go in and visit in office hours. I was intentional about that.
yeah, so I had 2 letters from PTs, and then my one professor was, I don't know what year you guys are or what major you guys are, but it was Dr. Ducharme from the kin program. And I took his class online because like it was mid-COVID times. Basically, I was kind of running out of time to get a letter of rec from a professor by that semester. Sounds kind of bad. So I chose him and another professor to really try to like get to know better, and just basically just attended all their online office hours. I stopped going to the other professor because I realized that I could make a better connection with Dr. Ducharme because he's very chill. And then luckily, like I was the only one who'd show up to his online office hours, so I feel like it made it a lot more easy to just get to know him better and to let him get to know me better. But yeah, I totally agree with what Raquel says though. Like he's not a pre-req class letter of rec writer, because he was an upper div kin class professor, I think. So I guess he's still like within the program, within the major, but I just knew like he would know me better than another person would.
Sorry to keep asking. I'm absorbing everything. This is great. But I feel like, okay, just to like keep going on that subject, I feel like my issue is that like, not that I don't have any questions ever, but like what do you guys talk about in office hours? Like how, like I feel like I don't have any questions to ask. So do you just go like, hey, how are you? And then that's it? Or like how do I start that conversation? I don't know if that's an awkward question, but
totally fair question. I'll try out to charm it on this one, but and then maybe you can be like, oh, I did this way instead. But yeah, I agree. It is kind of awkward. You just have to like force yourself to go into that position and like find something that you're interested in that you can just talk about. You could either take that approach. Like I found one of my, now that I'm in PT school, it seems a little bit easier because there's like no pressure of like, oh, I need a letter from you. But like, for example, one of my teachers is like into anime. So now I go in there and talk about like, oh, did you see this Crunchyroll update? And I don't even like anime that much, but I'm just trying to like build that connection. You know, he's like, oh yeah, right. And then the other way is just to like really try to nail home, like maybe if you do some research, like, oh, I was like interested in like your path, or like, how did you end up here? You know, people love to talk about themselves. That's just kind of how we're wired as human beings. So it's always good to just ask questions about yourself. And then usually they'll ask questions about you and you can be like, oh, you know, student, hopefully future PT, that kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I mostly agree with that. Like, what did I do? Oh, so I also have a really hard time like having questions usually because I think my brain's just empty most of the time when I'm listening to lectures and stuff, and in general. But so I think for Dr. Ducharme's class, I really had to force myself to like find at least one question I could ask, like even if it wasn't like super related, because I knew he'd be there for the office hours, and usually I think the questions I asked were like kind of around into his realm of interest, which is kind of what Raquel touched on. So that helped a lot. And then I think like or for me, it felt like I had to force it a little bit, but as time went on, like it got easier to and more natural to talk to him. So yeah, it's tough though.
So to transition the conversation to, DPT school, what should we expect when starting our first semester of PT school, and what was like the biggest difficulty, would you guys say, transitioning from undergrad to the program?
I can start on this one because it's kind of fresh for me since I'm a first year. So I started this past May. Um, so the hardest thing for me was honestly getting back into class for like 8 hours a day because I suffer from major like just COVID laziness and stuff. And like half of my schooling in undergrad was online. So I feel like my stamina was really low in the summer semester when I had to come in and sit for like 8 hours of class a day. And also the pace, like you guys have probably heard this, but it is a lot faster. And I think when you're first entering to, or at least for me, like it felt overwhelming and fast for those first couple weeks, but you do start to realize like that you'll mostly be okay. I don't know how to say this, Raquel. I feel like you know what I'm talking about though. Like I stressed out a lot for the first couple weeks, but then after taking some exams and things, like I knew that I would be okay in the end, like throughout the program. Like I don't have any fear of failing out of the program, which is a big security for me.
Yeah, I would agree. I think similar, the biggest thing for me and my like, we have like bigs in our program. My big knocked it into my head like the second week when I took my first like neuroanatomy exam and I got like a B and I was like, oh, I got a B. Everyone else, I was below the average score or whatever. And she was like, so it doesn't matter. Your GPA doesn't matter anymore. I was like, oh, you're right. So that kind of knocked it into my head like, oh, paradigm shift. GPA doesn't matter. Nothing matters. I'm just here to like learn pretty much. And I agree. And I think one of the like, although there was kind of that fear, like slight anxiety for the beginning part, and my experience is definitely not my classmates. Some of them are still kind of figuring out that like, oh, I don't need to care. And they're in their second year. Like everyone's different and that's totally fine. But for me, one of the things that was also comforting was like, wow, I'm really overwhelmed just now. Was realizing that I'm in a small class, I only have like 30 something people. And that at this point, like the program, they've put a lot into you by like accepting you and being like, hey, we're going to make you into a great PT. They've invested a lot in you and they want to like get a return on their investment by you graduating and like being a great PT. So realizing that like, oh, these people aren't trying to kill me, even though they're trying to kill me with tests, like they actually are doing this for my benefit. So like reaching out and being proactive rather than just reactive was also something that I learned how to do from that kind of struggle bus situation.
Yeah,
So sorry
for sure.
windows is what. win.
I definitely agree. I think it's super nice now just like to have the feeling of not caring too much about my GPA anymore.
Can I ask how you guys are making money right now? I like if that's like a personal question, you don't have to. But like, is it like in the field of physical therapy, or are you do you have a job outside? And how does that work with your hours with school and stuff?
I'll go first. I'm not working. A lot of my classmates aren't working, but also a lot of them are. But I think for the most part, like no one has a full-time job because there's just absolutely no way you could do that. I think most people are just taking on part-time positions. And I think mostly at the beginning, a lot of us didn't work, but then as time went on, people got better with their time management and stuff. They realized that if they wanted to, they could fit in a couple things. So I think it's mostly like savings and loans that people are relying on. And in my case, my parents are helping me out, which is like a huge privilege. But yeah, I don't know anyone who's like fully funding their current schooling like with a full-time salary right now.
Yeah, I'm seconding that. I don't know how it'd be physically possible just with the amount of time we're in class. I do have like a good maybe third of my class that works somewhere between like 2 to 10 hours a week. And I myself, until this semester, I worked like very little, just like teaching, tutoring, TAing for different classes, things like that. But yeah, it's just you're just watching your bank account go down is pretty much what it is for the 3 years. And you kind of have to be okay with that. Unfortunately, that's kind of the state of it.
Oh yeah, I want to make a PSA for anyone who doesn't know. I think all the Cal States do this, but they do have grants for their PT programs, and the amount you get varies. I'll just be like fully transparent. The max amount you can get that I know of is 4,000 a semester, which would come out to 36,000 a year because you have three semesters in 1 year, or 36,000 the whole program. Sorry, I can't do math right now. And that's like a huge number. So I think that was also another benefit of being accepted to like a state school. But yeah, I know Long Beach for sure has it, and I think some other schools do as well. And
Yeah,
most of
I
my
know,
classmates get like some, at least like a little bit of it.
I know for sure Fresno also has it, but yeah, it's max is 4,000 and it can vary within there, but I don't know anyone in that class that doesn't get at least a little bit of aid. Unless you're really rolling it, then maybe they're like, oh, they're fine. But I don't know anyone like that in my class.
So what does a day in your life look like?
So that's going to vary a lot depending semester to semester. You get absolutely no say in your schedule. They just give it to you and you say, okay, you want me on campus for 13 hours on a Monday? I guess that's how it is. But yeah, so it varies completely. Right now, my experience can be very different from Vivian's, but right now, Long Beach has a huge neuro focus, for better or for worse. So I'm in the middle of a year-long pro bono neuro clinic. So this semester, I'm treating a multiple sclerosis patient, which has been an amazing learning experience. Even though I never want to touch neuro again after school, I can say confidently I'll be a better PT because I was forced to. So yeah, so I do that once a week of like, going through the whole treatment planning process, treating a very complex patient, and then like, doing all the documentation, practicing like that. But other than that, it's just classes, labs, tests. Definitely still have time though for like, I go to church on Sundays. I do dance classes during the week. I got some time, not a crazy amount, but yeah, that's pretty much what my life looks like right now.
Yeah, I think for me, actually now that I think about it, I don't think I've had true Friday classes at all yet. I think in the summer semester we had a Friday class, but it was online, so it didn't really count that much. So I think it's super nice having the 4-day weeks right now. And also we have class reps, and I think the program has been very accommodating to my cohort because like we were able to ask our class reps to discuss maybe moving around certain classes or finding alternate times so that we could keep that 3-day weekend. And that's a huge privilege. Like I know it's not normal, but I feel lucky to have that right now. And then, yeah, I think everyone spends like at least 1 day a week doing something that's completely not PT related. And your study habits will also really just depend on who you are as well. So I can't speak to everyone's experience, but I would say I have a good amount of free time, although I should be using more of that free time right now for school. But like it's definitely not like it comes in waves too, depending on where you are in the exam season and stuff. So um yeah, I don't know, 3 day weekends are really nice right now.
All right, so one of the big questions, how do clinical rotations work in PT school?
Yeah, I can touch on this one because that's going to be me starting in May. So clinical rotations vary drastically by school, and I think that's something that you should definitely consider when you're considering what school you want to apply to and what school you want to be giving a lot of money to. So I'll talk first about how Long Beaches work, and then I can talk generally, like based on my knowledge, I know a lot of people at different programs, how things can work. So at Long Beach specifically, you don't start your full-time clinicals where like you're at a clinic and you're practicing under the supervision of someone else full time, unpaid, of course. But you don't start that in Long Beach until your 3rd year. And then your 3rd year is pretty much all rotation. So you do all your classroom or didactic work beforehand. And then integrated within that, there's the pro bono neuro clinic where you get 2 semesters long of like experience treating just like 1 day a week, so it's kind of like integrated. There's a little pro bono ortho clinic where it's like, oh yeah, a little bit of treatment, 4 weeks, So I kind of liked how it has eased me into now where I'm starting my clinicals in May. It's like, okay, well, I already have all of the theoretical knowledge and like I should have put it together for real patients. And that's very different from, oh, sorry, I also forgot to mention there's 3 12-week, wait, 3 12-week clinicals at Long Beach. Different programs do it differently. I know last I heard USC does like 10 mini clinicals. So it's like you get a bunch of different experiences in a variety of places. But the downside, of course, is that you never really get to like sink in deep to like as many fields. You kind of just get a small sampling of everything, which definitely has its pros and its cons. And then some programs, it's also common to do a clinical each summer. So after your 1st year, then you do a clinical, then you go back to the classroom, then you do a clinical, your 3rd year in the classroom and clinical, something like that. The pro to that is that it kind of, you're learning in the clinic as you're going along. You still got those deep dives in the clinics, but the con, of course, is that like when you're in clinic, it'll be like, oh, you don't know that yet? Okay, well, you'll get there later. You know what I mean? You don't have all the knowledge before you're applying it to patients. So I chose Long Beach very, oh, sorry, I was going to say something. I chose Long Beach very, I guess, intentionally because I really liked how they structured the clinicals, but personal preference for sure.
Yeah, Raquel answered that super comprehensively. I don't even know if there's much that I could add to that. I'll say like in my perspective as a 1st year right now, I do like that Long Beach's clinicals are heavily focused at the end just for me. Because I feel like maybe it's just a 1st year feeling, but I feel like my knowledge base like definitely isn't that great yet. So I don't know how it would go if I was thrown into a clinic right now. But I am also like excited that we do have the mini ortho clinic coming up this summer and the neuro clinic. I feel like those are good opportunities, kind of like a good in between of having like later clinicals, but also some experience before that.
Yeah, and sorry, one more thing. Sorry to like harp on so much. I just like I did a lot of research as a pre-PT, and even now I'm super fascinated by like admissions and all that stuff. But yeah, different schools also have different requirements for clinicals. For example, some will require you do an outpatient. So like think your standard kind of clinic where patients come into you. And some schools will also require that you do an inpatient, which is what you more think of as hospitals, where the patients are living in the facility, maybe like a skilled nursing facility, and the PT goes to them. And as someone that's not interested in inpatient at all, just not my cup of tea, I'm very glad that Long Beach does not require us to do that. So again, this is all very personal preference, but yeah, some things to consider that I don't think really people talk about enough for pre-PTs.
Yeah, that reminded me of another thing, which is that some schools allow out-of-state clinicals and other schools don't have that. And I believe Long Beach is one of the schools where they do not have any out-of-state clinical affiliations at the moment. Is that right, Raquel?
They're working on it. My class might be the
Okay.
first to start it, but you're right. It's
Oh,
way more limited compared to like private schools, for example. I think it's more like a public school, private school thing. So if you're like, oh, but I really want like an international clinical, or and some schools do that. I really want to go, you know, to Tennessee to see my boyfriend. Like, unfortunately, that is a big limitation of public schools.
yeah. And also with clinicals, like, or this is just what I've heard, but clinicals do help you build your connections and stuff for your career as well. So maybe if you do want to settle somewhere else, you can take that into consideration. But I mean, it shouldn't like impact your decision too much. Like I wouldn't rank it as a top thing, but you should definitely think about it.
Hey guys, sorry I'm a little late. How's it going?
No worries, it's good. How are you, Emily?
I'm good. I'm good. How are you?
Doing well.
Doing well. How's school going?
It's all right. We're getting busier these next few weeks, so but other than that, it's good.
Okay. I had a quick question. So I'm sorry if someone's already asked this, but I was kind of curious about what kind of observation hours you guys had, like what kind of settings and how many hours. Can you guys go over that real quick?
Yeah, I guess I can dive into like, well, I forgot the amount of hours that I had, but my settings were just outpatient ortho, but plus an aquatic, still outpatient ortho, but it was also an aquatic, so that counted. And I think I had like 5 to 7 like different clinics in my application. Oh, and I was also able to add in like virtual observation hours. So that was kind of cool.
Yeah, that was like one of my biggest weak spots of my application was my observation hours. Because I know Long Beach specifically, they max you out at 400 hours. So if you get more than that, like good for you, they don't care. And they also max you out at 4 clinical sites. So if you get more than that, good for you, they don't really care. But I mean, it's always, you know, if you're like, oh, you have something very unique, like, you know, oh, I worked in amputee research or something, you know, like that's cool. They like that. But I just had like 20 hours at a random PT mill, and then I had like 100 hours as an aide before COVID hit, and that was it. I did have informally like 10 hours of the pelvic PT, but I didn't report on my application because it was like after I had applied. But yeah, so that was my weak spot, definitely.
Yeah, for the record, I think I also have classmates who just had like 100 hours, but it was enough to get them in, so that's something to consider.
Okay, cool. Yeah. So you mentioned virtual. Is that still like an option for students right now? You know?
That's a good question. I did mine through PPT Grind, and I was able to add them into PTCast as like a normal clinic. I think I just wrote somewhere that it was like virtual. I think to be safe, I would just contact the programs that you want to apply for if it counts for them.
Okay, gotcha. That's cool. Awesome.
So I wanted to ask, what's something you guys wish you knew before starting your program, and what would you tell your past self, like where we're all at, what you know now?
So just to clarify, the question was, what would I tell myself in the past and what did I wish I know? Or that's maybe, yeah, okay,
Yeah,
got it. Okay. That's a good question. I mean, I look back and I was like, oh, who is she? Like, I don't recognize her. Like, I've aged, guys. PT school ages you. It's like, you know, it's not like crazy. I mean, sometimes it is that crazy, but like, gotten older. But I would say the biggest thing, like piece of advice I'd give past me is like, man, this field is as good as you think it is. Like the more I learn about it, the more I just really, really do love it. Like, sure, there's fields where maybe you can make more money. Like, sure, there's fields where maybe there's more prestige or something, but gosh, this field is like really amazing, guys. So I would like just tell myself like, good choice.
My brain's still buffering, but that was really good, Raquel. I think personally for me, I would tell myself to not be as worried during the application process, just because I feel like during that application process, like it was just a really stressful time for me, but a lot of it was also just me mentally doing that to myself. And also there's like these forums and things that you can check during the application cycle online where like all these people post all of their stats and like everyone's constantly like, oh, have you heard any updates from the school or whatever. I think that just added to my stress and my anxiety. So I mean, if you want to check those out like while you're applying, go for it, but just know, you know, just because someone posts all their stats and things like doesn't mean that you won't make it yourself. So yeah, I did not phrase that properly, but I hope you guys understood what I meant.
Okay, I have another question. So, have you guys talked about the GRE yet?
Like vaguely. What question do you have about it?
Vaguely. So specifically, kind of what tips work best for you, or like what study tactics work best for you?
My biggest advice with the GRE is, well, we kind of talked about it a little bit before, but like, in our opinion, it doesn't really matter that much. Like, as long as you meet the minimum, you're golden. My biggest piece of advice though is just take one of those practice quizzes online, like through Magoosh or something, and see where you're at, because I put it off for a long time. As in, like, I started studying like 3 days before I was registered to take it. Like, it was a stressful time. Um, bad idea, first off. But yeah, take that, because they were scary accurate for how you'll end up doing. So I like put it off for so long because I was like, oh, I just don't want to start studying, whatever, procrastinator. And when I actually took it, like, it showed me the areas I need to improve on. And there was a lot of areas where I was like, oh, I already with this practice quiz, like, met the minimum score. I'm not going to study for that, you know? So I would just say, just take a practice quiz. It's not that scary. Just sit down for an hour and do it. And then, just start.
I also kept pushing mine back and rescheduling it. And yeah, I honestly don't think I put like too much quality study time into it either, but I think that's also because I took the 2 practice tests. So there's ETS is the GRE company. They have 2 practice exams that you can take for free online, and those were actually pretty accurate compared to my score on the day of. Like, it was like somewhere in between the 2. So I definitely recommend doing that before you start studying, so you can really optimize your time and just like what Raquel said, focus on what matters. And Magoosh for vocab is really good. I like them. That's a free app, so you can keep it on your phone and stuff too.
Okay, gotcha. So you said Magoosh has an app. Is that what you said? Sorry, it's like a little loud.
Yeah, Magoosh has a vocab app, and like you don't have to do all the decks. I forgot how many decks they have. They have like a ridiculous amount of vocab card decks. But I think there's some like essential ones. I can look at them and send them to you later. But I definitely recommend that, especially if you, I mean, looking back, I don't think I really needed to focus on my reading score as much. But if you do need help on your reading score, then maybe practicing on the app would be a good thing. And also in general, just try to stick to the ETS materials. Like they have like a whole, I think like verbal and math separate books or something. And they also have a combined study book. It's been a while since I looked at these materials, but because you know how there's like Princeton and the Kaplan and all these other companies out there. I would say sticking to ETS. Like ETS should be your primary study resource, and then maybe after that you can branch out if you need more practice.
Okay, cool. Yeah, thank you. I guess one final question I kind of want to ask is, so do you guys have any plans personally for after graduating PT school? Like, what do you guys want to do? What do you guys want to focus on?
Yeah, so we did kind of talk about this a little bit earlier, but we can definitely expand more on it. So for anyone that wasn't there in the beginning when we introduced ourselves, first, I'm Raquel, in case you didn't figure that out. And I'm interested in like pelvic floor rehab when it comes to like sexual function, chronic pain, things like that for pregnant women, postpartum women, and oncological populations. And after graduation, I do really hope to attend a residency. So if you don't know what that is, it's pretty much like a year-long program where they like continue your education in a very specialized field that you might be interested in. And they pay you, which is very nice. They pay you less than a normal PT salary, but I mean, you are getting a lot out of it. And then afterwards, you're qualified to sit for a specialization exam, which means that like, oh, I'm a specialist in this, which like, you know, it's cool, but also it's just like, you know, if you're in a niche field such as myself, like I want to feel more confident before I'm, you know, working with patients that are, you know, in a vulnerable state. So that's my personal plans.
Yeah, I'm pretty much on the opposite end of the spectrum right now. And maybe it's because I haven't gotten a chance to really like discover my interests yet within the field of PT. I'm definitely open to the idea of a residency if I find something that I truly love. But as of right now, I think I just want to start working after graduation. And also like I think I'd like to work for a couple years maybe before considering a residency. So it's really cool that we have so many options though, which is what I like. Like you can go back into school anytime. So it just depends on the type of person you are.
Yeah, totally. And just to like, so you don't get I am like an anomaly within my cohort. Like, I think most people are more on Vivian's page where it's like, I don't know what I want to do. Versus me, I'm very stubborn. I'm like, nope, that's what I'm going to do. You can't convince me otherwise. I mean, I'm open, but I'm also not that open. So
Okay, so we've been going on for a little while now. Does anyone else have any other questions? No? Okay, so we can start wrapping up.
Sounds good. Well, thank you to Vivian, Raquel for taking the time out of their busy schedules to come in and answer our questions. It was a huge help, and it was really great being able to pick your guys' brains. So before we end the meeting today, Hanley and I have some quick announcements for you guys, starting with board interest form. So attached here is the link to the board interest form, and we'll make sure to send you guys this PowerPoint once this meeting ends, so you guys have access to all of this information. So the available positions that we have for next school year is co-president, community outreach, and secretary. Henley and Jaime are the co-presidents. I'm the community outreach, and Pushti is the secretary. So if you guys want to find out more information about what each position like does, then feel free to stick around afterwards, and we can definitely give you guys the rundown. And the mentor-mentee program. So you guys could either sign up to be a leader to guide other students, or to learn from someone more experienced in the field. May it be a student that's farther in their undergrad or in the DPT program. When I first signed up for the club, I signed up to be a mentee, and Vivian was my mentor. I can confidently say that I wouldn't know as much as I do about, the process or the field if it weren't for her. So I highly recommend that you guys take advantage of the opportunity. So I'm gonna pass it over to Henley.
All right, and here we just have a couple opportunities we have listed from other clinics in the area that are offering either aid jobs or volunteer positions. So Roush PT, that's where I work. It's a very fast-paced outpatient clinic. So if you want some experience in something that's a little bit bigger, then you can go for Roush PT. I highly recommend it. Select physical therapy, there is one on Palo Verde, which is right at the corner of campus. They're looking for some volunteers right now. And then Carla, who is one of our guest speakers, she works in Cypress. She's trying to hire some aides for me. So if you want kind of a very mentor-centered position, I would highly go for Carla. We also have another position at Rubik Systems Physical Therapy with a physical therapist named Jack Chen. They're just looking for a couple aides. I'm not too sure about the information on that one, but we do have all his contact info listed. So if you're interested, go for that. You can go to the next slide, please. All right, so next we have some upcoming events. So Cal State Long Beach's DPT program has a couple info sessions scattered throughout the semester. Right now, the most current one is on March 10th, which is next Friday. Yeah, next Friday. So if you're interested, the link is there. It's just a little tour. I think it takes about 1 or 2 hours. I would highly recommend it if you want to kind of see all the things that the campus offers for the program. And then we also have another volunteering event on March 25th. That's with the Adaptive Freedom Foundation. I think it's a beach event. I'm not 100% sure yet, but they are offering positions. So you can just go out there and see what kind of tools they use to help people who are facing kind of physical issues. And I think that is it.